Hi again, everyone. Welcome to Bay Sunday. I'm your host, Frank Malico. We begin with our weekly pitch. If you got a show idea, we would love to hear from you. Go to kpix.com, click on the KPIX5 logo there, scroll down to Bay Sunday, and hopefully we can all connect. Two young African-American men, professionals, one a doctor, the other a CPA, that had a deep love and respect for education, born in Alabama, raised in New York City, and eventually settling in L.A. They went on a personal crusade there to make sure the impoverished area of L.A., South Central L.A., got a helping hand. Cable TV. Yes, the brothers went on a 10-year fight from the back rooms of City Hall, ended up all the way at the Supreme Court to connect a community, all in an effort to let that area grow. It's chronicled in his new book, Anatomy of a Hustle, Cable Comes to South Central L.A. Pleased to welcome author Clinton Galloway. How are you?
Thank you, Frank. Glad to be here.
Good to have you with us. Well, your brother had a lot to do with this. Tell us about your brother. In 1979, you're having a conversation, and what happens?
Well, he was the one who originally brought us into the idea of cable television and what it would be. He told us that cable would become a strong market, and I was reluctant. I didn't see how people were going to pay for television when you got it for free.
Absolutely.
And he kept explaining how it was going to happen and how the technology would change, and the cable would basically absorb newspapers at some point. And so he convinced me. I was reluctant, but he was my big brother, so I had to go with him. So he convinced me that it made sense. And once I got studying about it and reading the research analysts about it, we saw it was the future.
Now, South Central LA, your brother was a physician.
Correct.
He worked at a hospital in that neighborhood.
Yes, he did.
So he had a love for that area.
Yeah, you know, because he had seen so many trauma units come in, and the crime and the violence that went on in South Central, along with the poverty, he felt it was important for people who had made achievements as we had to give back to the community and try to make things happen that would benefit the community educationally, economically, and in a medical sense, because medical is a real problem in South Central because they don't get the education and information they need to make good decisions about their medical health.
Yeah, cable brings in all kinds of
wonderful
things.
Exactly.
Well, now, why were they excluded? Why were they not getting penetration? Why weren't they getting it?
Well, no, when we came to do it, no one had even wanted to build South Central. They thought South Central was uneconomical because the people were basically poverty-stricken. Mm-hmm. We found out once we got there that when they found out that it had a value, the people who were working in the city, elected officials and their deputies, came to us and said, unless you give us a certain amount of your company, you can't do business here. All we could see was this was going to be a criminal problem, and I wasn't interested in criminal problems with, you know, elected officials and bribery and that sort of thing. And we told them we couldn't do it. And they pushed and said, unless you do it, we're not going to give it to you. And this was the mayor of the city of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley, told me to my face, unless we did it, you wouldn't do business in the city. And I couldn't accept that. So we decided we would go off on our own, and we thought that the technology should be there because the technology would lead the future for the community.
And did you hit these closed doors politically all along the way in LA?
Pretty much, because it's all one party for the African American community. It's all part of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. So once we got on the bad side of Tom Bradley, who was the top Democrat in the state at that point, he was getting ready to run for governor.
Right.
Everybody else made it quite clear that we weren't welcome there and that what we wanted to do, no one had a concern about what goes on in South Central. Mm-hmm. They were concerned about why we wouldn't give the payoff that they wanted. And we just couldn't see it being reasonable.
So, 10-year fight through the back rooms of City Hall, like you said, with the mayor. This goes all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
What happens?
We went to the Supreme Court after we took the judge, we filed the case, and the judge simply dismissed it after 10 days and said we didn't have a right to sue the city. The case ended up at the Supreme Court, and in 1986, the court ruled unanimously that cable television had a First Amendment right like newspapers do. If you use a public right-of-way, you can't limit it to only one newspaper. Therefore, you can't limit a cable system to only one cable.
Sure.
So when they did that, it was referred back and remanded back to the U.S. District Court in Los Angeles for trial. The judge there, who was a friend of the mayor's and a friend of Johnny Cochran's, she simply held the case for 6 years. And at the end of 6 years, she said, well, the Supreme Court was right, and they've been violating your rights for 10 years, and your rights are worth $1. And
so
what are you going to do? You know,
good luck to you.
Yeah.
Basically, right?
Basically, and it was reconfirmed. We were appealing her decision up, but the Congress in 1993 passed a law that said no matter what you did for civil rights violations in cable, you could not recover damages. And when you're out of the industry for 10 years and another company has entrenched itself in the market, you don't have a chance to get into the market again.
Well, this book takes you on that saga, and let's briefly talk about your brother, because he passed in '08 from leukemia, battled it for 10 years.
Right.
What would he say? Because one of his requests was write the book, right?
That was one of his things on his deathbed. He told me to finish the book, make sure we did it. We had started together, but he passed before we were able to finish it. Yeah. But it was important for the story, for people to know that people in South Central and other communities, minority communities, have really tried to improve themselves by investing in their own communities, by making technology available to the people who need it. And technology is important because media decides what people think of themselves. And you see there's little self-respect in a lot of urban minority communities because they don't see it. They see violence on television. They become desensitized to that violence. And you see what happens when they become desensitized. Things happen like Oakland, like Chicago. It's gunfights with military weapons every night. It's like being in a war zone.
Well, the book is terrific. I know it's been out for a couple of months now,
Yeah.
most of the year. We wish you all the best, Glenn. Thanks so much for coming
Frank,
in.
thank you very much for having me.
All the best.
It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. If you'd like more information about Anatomy of a Hustle, log on to anatomyofahustle.com. That's anatomyofahustle.com. Back with more Bay Sunday right after the break. Stay right there, folks.